If you're thinking about buying a new construction home in Calgary, there are some things that you need to consider. Because behind that brand new home in Calgary might look picture perfect, but behind the drywall and the fresh landscaping could be a financial trap. Over the last 4 years, Calgary's benchmark price has gone from about $431,000 in 2021 to around $573,000 in 2025, according to Kreb. That's nearly $150,000 in equity. But if you bought new during this time, you may not have seen that growth. In fact, you could be competing with other builders for years. So today, I'm going to show you why new homes in Calgary could cost you tens of thousands of dollars, and the one solution where they do make sense for you to buy, and the neighborhoods right now that you should avoid and the ones that you should consider if you are looking to buy this year. Hey, I'm Ryan Hawkins, a local realtor here in Calgary. And if you're looking to buy or sell here in Calgary or the surrounding areas, you can book a call with me that best suits your schedule. Just click down the link in the description. All right, moving on with the video. Reason number one are tariffs and rising costs. Builders don't eat higher costs. The buyers do. Tariffs and construction material prices are unpredictable, and they've been hitting the Canadian market hard. In 2025, the United States Department of Commerce proposed raising duties on Canadian softwood lumber to around 34.5% in its latest review. Then in June 2025, the US increased steel and aluminum tariffs to around 50% on imports from most countries, including Canada. Those moves drive up costs for materials, disrupt supply chains, and can delay projects. They also make Canadian exports less competitive and can pressure the Canadian dollar. Some analysts estimate that if a trade dispute continues, the cost of new residential construction in Canada could rise by 1 to 4% purely due to tariffs. On a $600,000 build, that's an extra $6,000 to $24,000, and those costs are almost always passed directly to the buyers. Industry experts warn that if tariffs remain or expand, the total build cost could climb to 10 to 15% once you factor in materials, labor, and supply chain impacts. And unlike resale homes, builders rarely absorb those increases. They pass them on to you, the buyer. But costs aren't even the biggest danger. The real problem is when you buy a new home, you end up competing against the builder themselves. Which brings us to reason number two, which is competing with the builder. Builders just don't build one home, they build entire communities. And if you buy in phase one of a new development, you might be competing with them for the next 10 phases. And here's why that's a problem. When you go to sell in, say, in 3 to 5 years, your builder may still be selling brand new homes down the street. And they've got deeper pockets and more time than you do and are able to offer incentives that attract buyers. They can hold inventory and wait for the right buyer in the way that most individual homers simply cannot. In some Calgary neighborhoods, we're already seeing 6 months of inventory sitting unsold. Compare that to the city average, which is about 4 months right now. You can see how quickly oversupply becomes your problem. And it's not just builders you're up against. It's who they sold to in the first place that adds another layer of risk. Which leads us to reason number three, which is investor speculation. During the boom, Calgary became a target for out-of-province investors, and one article reported that teams of buyers from Toronto flew out to Calgary, even taking buses to new condo projects, and in some cases, bought entire floors of buildings. And you might be asking why, and it's because a $300,000 condo in Calgary looked cheap compared to a $5,000 or $6,000 condo in Toronto. Other reports showed Ontario buyers picking up detached homes here, sometimes without ever visiting, because what could cost $1 million in Toronto could be found in Calgary for nearly half the price. The result is that many of those properties sit vacant or are back to market today. And that means when you go to resell, you're not only competing with your neighbors and the builder, you're also competing against deep pockets of Ontario investors who can potentially afford to cut prices to move inventory. So, does that mean you should never buy new? Not quite. There is one case where it still makes sense. And that reason is if you're planning to live in a new home for at least 7 years or more, then buying a new home can still make sense. Over that time, the builder finishes selling out, the neighborhood fills in with schools and amenities, and your property has a chance to catch up in value. Right now, you might even find motivated sellers, people who speculated on new builds, never moved in, and now need out. And that can create negotiation opportunities if you're willing to stay for the long haul. But knowing all that information, you might be wondering what are some of the areas you need to avoid and what are some areas that you need to consider. Based on the latest MLS data, several of Calgary's new master plan communities are sitting in clear oversupplied territory right now. Alpine Park right now is sitting at roughly 9 months of inventory. Homestead is over 10 months. Glacier Ridge is about 8.5. And Belvedere is around 7. For context, Calgary as a whole is sitting at a roughly around 4 months of inventory, which is considered a buyer's market. So you can consider that those communities are well over that benchmark. Some may even consider this an extreme buyer's market. This usually comes with slower sales, more price reduction, and softer resale performance in the short term. And these areas are moving much slower than a citywide pace. And if you're someone that needs to sell within the next few years, the risk of losing money or sitting on the market for a long period is a much higher than compared to a more balanced or low supply neighborhoods. So instead, you should be looking at more established areas. These areas already have schools, infrastructure, and amenities in place, and prices tend to be a lot more stable, and you're not competing with a builder who is still reselling phases. And so here's some of the areas currently showing strong numbers. If you want long-term stability focused on established neighborhoods where the inventory is tight, communities like Parkdale are sitting at roughly 2.9 months of inventory with a median price of around $942,000. Richmond is similarly strong at about 2.6 months of inventory, with a median price of about $945,000. Coventry Hills sits closer to 2 months and is one of the more affordable established areas at around $555,000. And Lake Bonavista, a very popular lake community here in Calgary, is holding roughly 2.1 months of supply with a median price of around $747,000. These areas are either balanced or in seller's market, which means stronger resale value and better long-term stability. One caution though is areas like Banff Trail, Tuxedo Park, and Capitol Hill. These areas are becoming very heavy on the infill, especially with townhomes and apartment complexes starting to come up. And this is going to create congestion in renter-heavy streets and put a lot of pressure on the resale market. So not every inner city neighborhood is created equal, so it is important to look closely with that. So before you do buy a new home, look at the data and understand where there is a buyer's market and even some with a more balanced and strong resale market. Some new communities have really high inventory while established areas are selling within weeks. And if you enjoyed this video, then YouTube suggests that you watch this video right here. Click the video now and I will see you over there. Take care.